Yeah, Minna, Carl from Purple Misplays. Today I've got another game straight from Japan for you. I'm going to be taking a look at Last Dungeon Pocket from designer Hiroshi Kawamura and part of the Pocket series of games from Jugame Studios. This is a solo-only adventure deck-building game in which you sort of play the role as a dungeon master with these pesky adventurers coming into your dungeon trying to steal your treasure, and it's your job to get them all out before they make it. No disclaimer needed for this one, as I did pick this one up on my own recently. With that said, let's head down to the table to see how this game plays, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. To set up a game of Last Dungeon Pocket, begin first by placing out the dungeon entrance card. Next, take the 7 dungeon cards that are also event cards on the back, giving those a shuffle. Place 2 more in your dungeon to extend the dungeon, and then set aside 2 of those for later possible extension of the dungeon. The final 3 cards are going to become event cards, and I'll show you what those do in just a second. But next we need to set up the adventurer deck of the adventurers that will be coming into your dungeon that you sort of need to fight off and prevent from getting your treasure. And to do that, you need to separate them into level 1, level 2, and level 3 cards, setting aside the sort of final boss, the legendary hero, level 4, off to the side. Then you're going to shuffle each of those decks, removing one of those as a crystal that starts in your possession for each of the different levels. So you're going to start with 1, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 1. And then you're going to create the enemy deck. And the way you're going to do that is, starting with level 4, one event goes on top, then level 3. Once you've done that, the hero deck should actually be placed face up. Level 3, like this, level 2, like that, and ultimately then level 1, face up like this. And this deck will then get placed above your dungeon entrance for them to then come into your dungeon later on in gameplay. To finish the dungeon, you do then need to place the treasure room at the end, and then the discard. I'm going to set the discard over here just so it's out of the way. And then finally, to finish or to complete setup, take your starting deck of cards, which is 3 1s, 2 2s, and 1 0, giving those a good shuffle and setting those off to the side as well. And then finally, drawing 4 cards as your starting hand. And with that, we are all set up for gameplay, except that in the first turn, this first hero or enemy should be placed here as it has just come into your dungeon. So Last Dungeon Pocket is going to play out over a series of rounds. And in each round, there are potentially 5 phases of that round. And the first phase is I'm going to be playing cards from my hand into the available dungeon slots. So right now I have 3 available dungeon slots in order to try and defeat the enemy that's currently in my dungeon. And in order to do that, I need to play cards such that the number in the top left corner, or the total of the numbers in the top left corner of the cards that I've played, beats the number in the top left corner of that adventurer card. So in this case, I only need to hit a 1 in order to kill that slime. And the way the cards are going to get played is like this. Again, this number in the top left corner is going to be the strength of that card. But this number here in the blue flag is a number of cards that I need to discard from my hand in order to play that card. So if I want to put this out of my dungeon row as a level 1 attack, I need to discard 1 other card. And the 3 level 1 cards that I have are all exactly the same, discarding 1 card to play 1 card, worth 1 attack strength. This 0 is a sort of a special card. And what this 0 is going to do is I don't need to play any cards, but this one will go into my dungeon row. Even though it's a 0, it doesn't count as any attack, but it will take up a slot in my dungeon row. And this one says at the bottom here that I'm going to draw 2 cards from my deck. So this is a way to get more cards into my hand, but remembering that it does sort of gum up the works as it does take a slot in my dungeon. So after I've played all the cards that I can play, I'm going to check to see if the total number in my cards played is equal to or greater than the total card played here, moving from left to right. So I'm going to add this card, then this card, then this card. And for example, if the first two cards of 3 that I've played were enough to take out this enemy, then the last card is actually going to stay in the dungeon and not get taken back. It will stay in there. Likewise, if all of the cards are not enough to defeat the enemy, those cards will be turned sideways and laid on top of the enemy to count as damage that's been done to the enemy, meaning that those cards are no longer in my deck or in my hand until that enemy is defeated. And if the enemy is not defeated, they will then move forward 1 space in the dungeon, as well as the enemy deck, which means that I now have less spaces to play cards. So if I don't kill the enemy, I'm slowly running out of space to play cards. If I do kill the enemy, I then get to choose to either turn that enemy into a crystal for free, simply flipping over the card and getting whatever amount of crystals are shown, or I can pay the crystal cost shown here, in this case 2, and if I pay that crystal cost, this enemy then gets scouted into my sort of dungeon party under the will of me, the evil dungeon master, in order to help me fight against the further adventurers that are coming in later, which means that this card then gets placed on the top of my deck that's coming out. In which case it will then come out and it will be usable just like all of the other cards that I have, except that every enemy has a special ability. So for this slime, the ability is a copy, and it says that this slime card can copy any other card that I've played that turn. So if I play a big card, I can spend only 2 cards to place this out. But 2 cards for 1 damage is horrible. But 2 cards for something huge later on copied could be really, really good. So this card potentially is a great card, but as it stands is not a great card. So again, phase 1 is action. Phase 2 is checking to see if what I've played defeats the enemy. Then phase 3, if I've defeated the enemy, is to either turn that enemy into a crystal or pay crystals to recruit that or scout that enemy into my own personal deck. Phase 4 is if I did not defeat that enemy, they move forward 1 space. Sorry, that's a mistake. The moving forward is part of phase 2 when I'm checking for damage. So again, phase 1 is placing out cards for action. Phase 2 is checking to see if I've defeated the enemy. If I have not, they will move forward. If I have, phase 3 is then turning them either into crystals or scouting them into my deck. Phase 4 is then prepping for the next round. If the enemy has already moved forward, that enemy is already set. If not, and I have defeated the enemy, I will simply draw the next card and place it there. If it's an event card, I will draw the event card, do whatever it says, and then draw 1 new adventurer into my dungeon. And any cards that I've played that were not used to kill the enemy will then slide forward into the leftmost slot, and I will begin the next round. But finally, the 5th phase before starting the next round is drawing 3 cards from my deck into my hand. And I do have a hand limit of 6, so if I hit 6 before drawing all 3 cards, I will stop drawing as soon as I hit 6 cards. Same thing if I use a card, for example, like this 0 that adds cards into my hand, I can never have more than 6 cards in my hand. Except that I get to draw before choosing the 6. So I could draw extra cards and then discard the ones that I don't want in my hand. And it's worth mentioning that this game, while sort of like a deck builder game, works slightly differently to every other deck builder game in that when I've played through all of my cards and my discard is full and my deck is empty, I'm going to turn the discard into the deck just like you would in most deck builders. But in this case, I'm not ever shuffling my cards. So as soon as I'm done my discard, I'm simply going to flip them over and that becomes my deck. So the order that I'm placing things into my discard is also potentially going to be important. So I'm going to continue doing this until either I've defeated all of the enemies in this deck or the enemies make it into my treasure room, in which case I lose. I can also lose if I ever need to draw cards and I don't have enough cards to draw during that refresh phase when I should be drawing 3 cards into my hand. Finally, the last thing that you do need to know is there are 2 other things that I can spend my crystals on in addition to scouting things into my deck. At any time, but only once per round, I can spend 2 crystals to push the enemy deck back 1 space in the dungeon. Or I can spend, as shown in the upper right corner of these dungeon cards, I can spend 3 crystals to extend the dungeon, placing one of these rooms into my dungeon. So that's basically it for how the game plays. Again, each of these cards will have special abilities and so on, and I will explain those as they come out. For right now, let's go ahead and get started. I need to defeat the slime with a 1. So this is very simple. I'm going to discard one of my 1s to place a 1 in that area. Now looking at my hand, I have 2 cards left. Drawing 3 cards is only 5 cards, so there's no real reason for me to play anything else into the dungeon. I'm not scared about adding things or pushing back yet, so that's it for me. I'm going to stop there, which means this one does defeat the slime. This one gets discarded, and I choose to either scout that slime or flip that slime. Slime costs 2 crystals, and it copies things later on in the game. It's pretty useless as itself, because I don't ever really want to spend 2 cards to place 1 card out. But a copy could be really big late game, so I'm actually going to recruit that slime into my deck, spending 2 crystals from the game. Which means I now draw 3 cards, 1, 2, 3, like that. But actually I did that in the wrong order, not that it matters, but first he comes down. I should be sliding things over, there's nothing to slide, and then I draw these cards. And that's important because if an event card comes out, the event card comes out before I add cards into my hand. So now I'm fighting against this sort of soon-to-be hero, sort of fledgling, growing hero. He's a 2 for 1 card, which is very nice. But also his ability says, because he is a fledgling hero and he will sort of grow up as he gets older, if he's fighting against level 3 enemies later on, or more, level 4 means the final boss as well, his power will, instead of being a 2, actually become a 6. So he powers up against the later enemies in the game. All right. And just so you can see what's coming up, so you can have some more thought about what I'm doing, this dwarf here is a 2 for 1 card as well. And he says that I can get rid of 2 crystals to extend the dungeon. So normally it costs 3 crystals to grow the dungeon. With this dwarf, it would only cost 2 to do the same thing. All right, so fighting against this hero, I need to play a 2. Again, I don't really care about this slime right now, so that's a great card to discard to play things. So I'm going to discard that slime and one of my 2s, because the 2s are expensive. They cost 2 cards to play 2. So unless I really can, I don't use the 2s all that much, which means discarding 2, I can place out this 2 like that. I'm going to stop there. This 2 does kill him. That goes into my discard. And this hero I really love to have. So I'm going to use the crystal again. Yes, I'm getting low, but we'll just start turning more things into crystals. He becomes the top of my deck. The dwarf steps down, and the next character coming is the sort of villager kind of guy, which is free to play, gets me 1 attack. And what this does is it lets me choose 1 card from my discard pile and remove it from the game, which means I'm culling sort of weaker cards, which is not a bad thing to do, except I'm never real great at culling cards in deck builders, so that's less exciting to me than it would be for other people, I think. All right, so drawing 3 cards then. 1 is my hero. Again, these don't get shuffled. I simply flip them over to the other side. 2 and 3. So all I need to do is play 1 card to play him out, and that's already a 2, which is going to be great against him. And I am still at 3 cards, so there's no reason for me to play anything else out right now. Especially because I like to use those 2s as sort of scrap to play other things, because, again, those are more expensive. So we are going to stop there again. That 2 beats the dwarf. Now, I'd love to have the dwarf, because being able to extend my dungeon cheaper is good, except I only have a 3 crystal end. I didn't mention this before, but I should. I never get change back on crystals. So if I bought him, he only takes 1 crystal, but if I spend 3, I don't get 2 back. I just lose those crystals, and that's a really bad idea. So I'm just going to turn him into a crystal like that. And this guy, again, gets discarded. The farmer, I called him a villager before, but he is a farmer, comes down here, and you can see the next card coming up is an event at the end of this round. Farmer is a level 1, but first I need to draw 3 cards. 1, 2, and 3. Now we are full up. So it might be worth slotting in some cards just to thin out my deck a little bit. And let's see, I only need a 1 against him. So playing a 2 is not going to be smart because it will all go there. I don't get change, obviously. So let me play that to place out a 1. And then, yeah, I might as well get my deck cycling some more. So I'm going to spend this 1 and this 2 in that order so I get the 1 back first to play another 2 in preparation for the next round, leaving me with that 0 card. I do kill him with that 1. So that 1 comes here. Again, I don't really love culling, and having more crystals right now would be great, so I'm going to turn him into a crystal. Then we trigger our first event, which is the dungeon map, and says, I'm going to throw away everything in my hand. It says if there isn't anything, this does nothing, but there is. That 0 then goes into my discard pile. This guy comes down. The Lich is a 2-card 4 damage, and he's got Drain Touch, which says, I'm going to draw 3 cards from the deck and then place one of those cards back on top of the deck, which is pretty cool. And coming up next is a reincarnated person, which is a 2-card 5 power. And this one is going to let me play 1 card from my hand with for a cost of 0. So if I play him, then I get to then trigger the ability to play another card for free, which is pretty awesome. So I'd like to push to get him. I don't know if I care about the Lich. Being able to cycle through cards is great, but I need crystals for other things, and this guy is cool. So anyway, this slides down 1 space to here. This deck flips over, and I draw 1, 2, and 3 cards like that. So I don't need to copy anything yet. The slime goes discard. My fledgling hero goes there. I will stop there. 2 and 2 does beat the Lich. I discard. I want the hero back before that one, so we'll do it that way. And again, I'm going to turn the Lich into crystals for now. That reincarnated man comes into the dungeon, and next we've got this sort of ancient weapon. And it is a 2-card 5 damage, and its power is sort of self-destruction. So from my hand, I'm going to throw away 1 to 3 cards, and I'm then multiplying the number of cards that I threw away into my discard by 2, and it will do that much damage. Except after it does that, this card is then removed from the game. So it will do its 5, and then I'll do that power, and then that card gets taken out. All right, so both of those are really cool to have. 2 for 5 is great. He's a 3 crystal, he's a 2 crystal. I got lots of crystals and no real scare yet, so I might try and get both of those. But for right now, I gotta fight him. I've got a 1, a 2, and a 1, and that's my hand, which is sad because I didn't get my 0, which is gonna let me draw more cards. So clearly I'm not beating him this turn. So I could throw away 2 cards to place 1, 2, or I can throw away 2 cards to place 2 1s. And either way, that's not great for my hand. So I might as well throw away the 2 1s because I'd like them to come back to play out that 2. I can't play this 1 because I don't have anything else to throw away. So now you will see he gets hit for 2, means he still has 3 health left. And he moves 1 step further into my dungeon, as does this card deck. Why? Because as soon as I kill him, the next person is coming in here, not here. So I do need to push them back if I don't want them to overwhelm me later. Then I draw my 3 cards. 1, flipping the deck. 2, 3, like that. And now is where we get a problem. It's not going to be a problem because I can win, but I want to show you what I mean by this 0 taking up a spot. I could play that 0 for free and draw 2 more cards, but then I only have 1 more slot to place things in, and I don't have anything strong enough to take him out with a single card. So that means at this point, using this card is very dangerous / very stupid. So what I'm going to do is I will play... No, I want the 0 coming back sooner. Play the 0 to play this 2. So now I'm at 2 plus 2 is 4. It's not enough. So I'm going to then play the slime to play the 1, 2, 2, and 1 is 5. We're good. So those get discarded. And I'm going to play them in that order back. I beat him. I want him badly. So I'm going to play that 3 out of the game, or spend those 3 crystals to scout him into my deck. The ancient weapon moves there. And on deck is the Monster Hunter, who's got a 1 card for 4 power, and he's got this sort of archery support power. And what that says is he's going to double the power of any card other than himself that's been played. That is also huge. But I'm running out of crystals. If I get the ancient weapon, I can't get the double power. Or if I get the double power, I can't get that because I've got 4 crystals left, and that's a 2 and a 3 is 5. So I need to choose which of those I want, but first I need to be able to defeat anything. So 2-5 is more expensive than a 1-4, and his big power goes away when he uses it once. This guy can continue to double powers every time, and he's only a 1 buy. So I think I want that over this. So he'll be a crystal, but let's defeat it first. 1, 2, and 3 like that. Then I do need to play 2 cards to play him out, but that's fine. 1, 2, he's a 5. And 5 beats 5, so I do get him back in my discard. This one I am turning into a crystal like that. And you'll see now they are level 2s. I think they've already been level 2s. But now I've got more yay crystals. Next guy comes into the dungeon. Hello there, Monster Hunter. And then we've got an event coming up next. All right, so I do want the Monster Hunter. I need to draw 3 cards. 1, flipping, 2, and 3, which is not great because he's a 4. And I need 3 to buy him. So what I need to do first is I am going to get rid of 2 crystals to push him back 1 space. Like that. Then I need to play that 0 to draw 2 cards. 1 and 2. Then we are still at level 2, so his power hasn't activated yet. But he's still pretty good. So I'm going to play that card to play him for 2. And then I'll play another 1 to play another 1. Because there is another 1 coming soon. So that's the end. Now that 0 is part of my attack. 0 plus 2 plus 1 is 3. Gets placed on him. He's not dead, so he will move back forward 1 again. As does this. He didn't leave yet, so we don't activate the event yet. I draw 3, 1, 2, and 3 like that. It's not a great hand, but all I need is a 1 to beat him. So that 2 goes there. I played that 1. I stopped there. Have to, because I can't play that anyway. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I could put them in any order I want to. I want 2, 1, 0, 1 like that, maybe. We'll see what happens. He's defeated, and I definitely want that guy. So those 3 crystals go away, and he's mine now. The event is triggered, which is a rock fall, and says, I need to put 1 card that's been placed out in the row into my discard, and if there isn't one, then nothing happens. Well, there's nothing because my dungeon is clear, so I don't need to place anything back. That's great. Then the next person coming into our dungeon is the Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer is 2 cards worth 10, but his power is Berserk, and what that means is when I use him, if I don't kill the enemy, everything is going to move an additional space forward. So it's going to advance twice in the dungeon instead of once. So I really can only use him if I'm going to destroy the enemy that turn. But anyway, he costs 4 crystals and I only have 1 left, so I'm not going to be getting him. Anyway, after him though is the dragon, which is a 3-card 9. And the dragon says when he's used, it pushes the adventure deck back 2 spaces. So this is a free pushback if I use the dragon. So I would love to get the dragon, but that means I'm going to need to turn him into crystals. That's 3 plus 1 makes a 4 for that dragon. So that could be good. Let's see how this plays out. So I got 1, 2, flipping this one is 3. Now is where things get interesting. Because we're in trouble. If I play him for 1, oh wait a minute, this is cool. All right, so I'm playing this 2 and this 1, 2 cards to play out the reincarnated guy. He's a power 5, but his ability says that I can play 1 card for 0 cost, which means I play this card for 0 cost, which is a 4. Except that his power is anybody but him is doubled. So this is now a 10 plus a 4 is a 14. I do succeed. Yay. So those both go in my deck, or in my discard. I am turning the Dragon Slayer into crystals. The dragon comes down into my dungeon. And the next person on deck is this sort of master wizard that has the resurrection power. And the resurrection says I get to choose 1 card in my discard and add it into my hand. But if there's nothing in my discard, it does nothing. Anyway, I won't be able to afford her because I'm hoping to get this dragon, and that uses up all my crystals, which needs to be, could be very dangerous because they're going to be moving forward, and if I don't have crystals, then I can't do anything with them, but we'll see what happens. Because that also takes 3 cards to play, although she is a 9, so if I can beat her, that's great. So if I can beat him, yeah, we should be okay. 1, 2, and 3. Now remembering that this card says if my opponent is level 3 or higher, this is a 6. So against him who is a level 3, this is a 6. But I don't have a whole lot of cards to play anything. So anyway, that 2 goes away. And that's a 6. I can't play this 1. Means there's 6, dragon moves forward 1, she moves forward 1, or the deck moves forward 1, which is scary now because I only have 1 space left. I draw 3 cards, 1, 2, and 3. And now is where we have a problem. I'm not going to be able to beat the dragon because playing this 0 blocks that. So I could use this 3 to extend or to push back. Right now that doesn't change anything. So let's use the 3 to extend the dungeon by 1 space. Like that. Now my turn continues. I have to play the 0 because a 1's not going to do me any good. So then this flips over and we're going to add 2 cards like that. And this is where we're in trouble because the slime can only copy something that's been played this turn. I can't copy the 6 with the slime because they haven't been played together. So that's 6. I could play 7, 8. But then I still need a 1 next turn because there's only 1 more space for me to play and I only have 1 crystal left. So that's going to have to happen. So I'm discarding the slime to play the 2. So 2 and 0 and 6 is now 8. I still haven't won. I think we're going to be in trouble, but let's see what happens next. They move forward 1 space. Like that. I draw 3 cards. 1, 2, 3, and that is my 6. So next turn, if I have anything left, I can't draw many cards, but that's okay. They're already at 6 and 8. I need 1 damage left. So I am just going to use, hold on. I don't like this too. To play a 1, that 1 goes there. So I want that one like that, goes there. Dragon's dead, but I don't have enough crystals to buy it anymore, which is sad because that would have been a great way to hit her and push her back 2 spaces. But all I have is 1 crystal because I had to extend the dungeon, so that goes there. She comes into my dungeon. And next up is the Samurai, who is a 2-card 7, and says from the deck, I'm going to draw a number of cards. No, sorry. The number of cards in the deck becomes additional damage to his attack. So if I have a fat deck and he attacks, that will be 7 plus however many cards are in the deck, which would be great, but that's a 4 crystal. And I think we're probably going to need our crystals to start pushing back and extending the dungeon. But I now add 3 cards, which is 1. What am I doing? Hold on. Yeah, that's right. Flipping that is 1, 2. We're full. Stop there. And I need to hit her for 9, which isn't going to happen right now, the way things are. So I'm going to, again, extend the dungeon for 3 crystals. 3 crystals gone, dungeon extension like that. So now I have 2 spaces still. We can pull the same thing off that we did last time, but that's overkill. But that's okay, because he's a 7 and I know I've got a 6 coming. Yeah, that's okay. Then we're going to play this. Oh, but the slime can copy something. Huh. If I play him, I could play the slime for a 10 and save my double. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to play a 1 and a 2 to play him. And he's a free placement, so he's playing the slime, which is copying him, so that's 10. So I beat her. Those get placed out. She is turning into a crystal. He comes into the dungeon. We've got an event coming up. Then we add 3 cards. 1, 2, and 3 like that. Not bad. It means I am going to have to lose that, though. But that's okay. All right, so I'm going to throw out this card first to play my 6. Then I'm going to throw out this card to play a 1. I'm real worried about the last guy. All right, in any case, I win. So those go into my deck. Now, I have exactly 4 crystals. I could use that to buy him, but then I only have 2 slots to beat the final boss. And I don't know if I can do that, because I don't know that I'm going to kill him in 2 rounds. Otherwise, I don't take this card, and I got to use only what I have to defeat the final boss. But that gives me 2 chances to push them back. Yeah, I got to do that. Then the last event gets triggered. The infinite corridor, which says, oh, awesome. I pushed the, that's horrible. I pushed this deck back 1 space. I wish I knew. I mean, there's no way I could have known that was coming, but I should then have taken that samurai. But oh well, it is what it is. All right, so then finally, the legendary hero comes into my dungeon, and we have to defeat him before he gets to the treasure. So that's 1 card, flipping that, 2 and 3 like that. I don't want to use him because he's doubling something, and there's nothing here that I want to double. So I might as well discard those 2 cards to play a 2, which knocks him down to 22. And he moves forward 1 space like that. I get 1, 2, and 3 like that. And I'm going to use a crystal to push them back 1. That's 3, but I don't get money back. And I can't spend 4 to do it twice because you can only do that once per turn. So then I'm going to draw 3 cards. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're at 7 cards, so I need to get rid of something. And I guess I don't really care about the drawing right now, because I got lots of fun stuff to play with right here. Oh, this is pretty awesome. I think we might win right now. Let's see what we can do. I need to play 1, 2 cards. To play this guy out, who gives me a free play, which is this guy right here. So that's 11. Then I'm going to play this 1 card to play out this guy in my final slot, which is 4. So that's 5, 11, 15, and then he doubles something else. And since this says that his power is increased to 6 against 3 or level 3 or higher enemies, that means this is now at 12 because he's doubling it. So 5 and 12 is 17, and 4 is 21. And then 21 plus 2 is 23. We're 1 short, so we haven't beaten him yet. He moves forward 1. I flip this. I draw 3 cards. Remembering 21 plus the 2 that was there is 23. And now very simply, I discard this 2 to place out 1. And I've now defeated the legendary hero with 24 and won the game. So while I'm here, I usually like to take a look at the components. You've seen all of the components. All of the components here are the cards. I love the artwork on these cards. Let me just show more of them to you up close. And actually, let me pull out the crystals that I started with so you can see the 3 characters. I think that's those, yeah. The 3 characters that we didn't see on the screen while I was playing. The level 1 card that was a crystal at the start of the game is this Golem, who has a sort of an ironclad protection ability that says you're going to add 1 card from the deck into your hand when he's played. And that's a 1 card, 2 power. The next one here is this sort of silver class warrior. He is a 1 card 6, which is amazing, but he has no special ability. And then finally, the level 3 card that started off as a crystal is this summoner that summons demons. And the summon demon ability says, even if I'm unable to defeat the adventurer that round or that turn, they do not move 1 space forward in the dungeon. So it stays in place even if I didn't defeat them that round. So those are all the different cards that we saw in the game. But let me just show you real quickly one more time. This one kind of reminds me a bit of Breath of the Wild, Zelda kind of. But all of this character artwork, it's this really cool sort of almost paper cut out. There's no dark outlines on anything. Everything is just solid colored shapes that are put together to make this. This is the legendary hero. There are 2 other difficulty levels, or actually 3 other difficulty levels in the game. The first one is sort of an easy mode where you only have to defeat the level 1 and level 2 adventurers. The second mode, you're actually starting with that hero that I had in this game. He starts at the bottom of your deck. This is still the ultimate boss that you're trying to defeat, except you add the conditions that at the end of the game, you still have to have at least 1 crystal left. And this character needs to be part of the party that deals the final blow to this guy. There's also another difficulty level where you do remove all the level 1s. They become part of your starting deck, which means you're starting fighting against the level 2 adventurers, and there is 1 less event in the game, and then you're fighting against this final sort of other evil demon guy that you're trying to defeat, and he's got higher power. And again, you're starting fighting against the level 2 adventurers with the same amount of crystals that you normally start with, so things do get quite a bit more difficult. But yes, I, again, love the artwork on these cards. I love the sort of thematic flair of all of the different crystals and the way that the dungeon looks spread out across your table. I guess I should also show you these other 4 events. There's this sort of between dimensions event. It says you're going to shuffle the discard pile and put it underneath your deck. This one is sort of sealing the magical barrier. It says, from your hand, you're going to choose one card and remove that from the game. And again, remember, you're drawing your new hand after activating this event, so there's a chance you wouldn't have anything in your hand, in which case it does nothing. Here's another one of those endless corridors that does push back the enemy one space in your dungeon row. And finally, this last one is like an illusion of your hometown. And you're going to add 2 cards into your hand from the deck. Again, remembering 6 is the maximum. So if you added these 2 cards and you didn't have space, you'd have to then discard 2 other cards. So that's basically it for the components. Meet me back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Sorry, real quickly, just wanted to show you the packaging for the game because I do generally do that in my videos. This game does come in this very beautiful but very simple, just small deck box. And you'll see here, well, if you can read, you'll see here that inside this box, there's actually no rules. The rules are a PDF online, so you need to scan this QR code here on the box, or also with this box comes a sort of description of this pocket line from Jugame, and again, explanation that there are no rules in the box. You need to scan the QR code to find the rules online, which is a little bit of a hassle, but the rules are fairly complicated for a game of this size, so to squeeze all of those rules in this little deck box would mean that the box had to become quite a bit bigger, and I don't know how great that is. Also, like the Tayoninai Maholtsukai or the Unreliable Wizard video that I did do, this similarly comes inside one of these sort of aluminum Ziploc bags like this. So in this bag, again, you get this box and you get this card about the Pocket series. And yeah, that's basically it. Meet me back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. This is an interesting game for me because even before getting it onto the table, I saw, here's a small box game from Japan, beautiful artwork, interesting theme, deck builder, solo deck builder, small box. And I'm thinking, well, deck builders are cool. I'm becoming more and more interested in deck builders. It used to be a mechanism I wasn't hugely into, but I've been enjoying quite a few more of them recently as they start expanding and becoming more interesting, other than just play a card, buy a card, play a card, points, play a card, buy a card, play a card, points. But here we've got a solo deck builder. Solo deck builders tend to be pretty rare because deck building is all about getting cards to add to your personal deck while other people are trying to do the same thing. But more importantly, this is a small box deck builder game. And a deck builder, usually, the core mechanism of deck building is all about getting cards to add to your hand, to make your hand more powerful, to do more interesting things. And it's all about cards, 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 cards. So a small box deck builder is often confusing or concerning because there aren't that many cards in the box. So is it possible to do a good deck builder with that few cards in the box? So here's a solo deck builder, a small box deck builder, together solo small box deck builder. This is a unique task. I did also recently review another solo small deck building game called At the Helm from Button Shy, and I enjoyed that one quite a bit, but it did get to the point where sometimes you were kind of concerned that you were seeing the same cards and there wasn't a whole lot there, and that was only 18 cards. There are quite a few more than 18 cards in here, but it is still a small deck. So I was concerned, yes, this could be fun, but will it continue to be fun as I continue to play it? And I have to say that I continue to really enjoy this game, and it really does what it sets out to do. So let's talk a little bit about what this game is, what it does, and so on. So ultimately, I'm starting with a small hand of cards, and just like most deck builders, throughout the game, I'm trying to add cards to my hand to make it stronger. And in this case, I'm using that deck of cards to fight off the heroes, the sort of adventuring party that's coming into my dungeon trying to take my treasure. And in order to do that, I need to play cards that sort of matches or goes beyond the health level, basically, of the adventurer that's in my dungeon at that point. And I can't just play cards. To play a card, I have to pay the cost of the card by discarding other cards to do so, to play that card in order to defeat that guy, and then continue to do that until I've defeated all of the adventurers that come into my dungeon. And then again, as I'm doing that, add cards to my hand to make that hand of cards or that deck of cards more powerful, to then defeat more powerful adventurers, because the adventurers continue to increase in level, continue to increase in sort of hit points or difficulty to defeat, and then ultimately I have to defeat that final boss that has 24 or 30 hit points, depending on which side of the card I'm playing, based on the difficulty level I'm playing. And this puzzle is interesting, except that it gets even more interesting because I start with 4 cards, and then I'm only adding 3 each turn, but more importantly, I only ever have 6 cards in my hand at any one time, which does 2 things. Number one, it makes the system work better because I was worried about not having enough cards in my deck. Well, if I can only have 6 cards at a time ever, then it doesn't do me any good to have a bunch of extra cards because I'm going to cycle through this deck. So this deck builder is very much pushing towards efficiency, which often I tend to be bad at because I generally don't enjoy culling cards in deck builders because I'm never sure. I'm always sort of afraid of taking the risk of getting cards away because then what if I need a deck card and I got rid of it? And I generally do badly with culling in games. But this game forces me to think about this efficiency of how to make the best deck that's cycling through the best way possible. But it also means now that I only ever have at most 6 cards. And I'm generally going to have to spend between 1 and 3 cards in order to place out a card. Which means if I'm spending 3 cards or 2 cards to put something else out, well now I have even less sort of stuff that I can use to do anything with. And then it gets even more restrictive because I can only place out cards in locations in my dungeon row that are open. And if I'm failing, then the bad guys or the adventurers are moving forward spaces and I'm getting even less location or less space to put my cards into. So it really does restrict this deck building puzzle or this deck sort of management puzzle, this efficiency puzzle, by reducing my hand very small. Only drawing a couple cards each time means that I'm not refilling my hand every time. I'm just adding a couple cards to my hand. So then I do need to take advantage of that 0 card that adds more cards or some of the other adventurers that add abilities to add more cards in order to cycle through those cards to get to the things that I need to get. Which is great. It really makes for a good puzzle with all of these restrictions thrown in. But then we get to the deck building piece. Now we're talking about the crystals, because every time I defeat one of these adventurers, I can either take them for their crystal sort of value, or I can spend crystals that I already have to add that adventurer to my deck. And if I don't add adventurers to my deck, I'll never be strong enough to beat the stronger characters or the stronger adventurers that come out later in the game. But if I add too many into my deck, then I don't have enough crystals to pay for things later. And remember, those crystals are not only recruiting or scouting people into my deck, but also pushing the enemy back when they start advancing through my dungeon, or adding chambers to my dungeon to make that treasure room further away for them to get to later on. So I really have to be careful with those crystals, because if I'm not managing the enemy, well then the available spaces for cards shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. I can't play enough cards to do enough damage, means they're going to move forward more, means that space shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So I need to make sure I have crystals to keep pushing them back, to keep stretching out my dungeon, so that I don't die by them getting to the treasure. So there's this extra puzzle of the deck building. When do I add cards to my deck? Which cards do I add to my deck? How do I do that? Do I save up a bunch of crystals to get that card that I really want because I've played this a bunch now and I know which cards are coming? But I don't completely, because I've removed 3 cards to start as crystals, so there's always one of each level character missing from the game, which also adds more variability because I don't know for sure that I can do what I want to do. And every time I play, the order the cards come out in, the amount of crystals I have at any given time, and then which cards are even in the game to play with at all, changes up the way that I have to solve the puzzle, changes up the way that I have to think about the game each time, so it doesn't feel the same every single time. So this efficiency puzzle of how to use my cards the best way, added to this puzzle of when to add things to my deck and how to deck build in this game, really comes together in a nice, interesting way. Plus the availability of space in the dungeon and the usage of crystals to push things or to make more space in the dungeon makes things even more interesting. And then it adds in that mechanism from games like Eon's End, where you never shuffle your cards. Whatever order I discard things is the same order that they're going to come back out in the next sort of round of cards when my deck gets refreshed, which is super important. Because now that I start building my deck and I start thinking about how this card is going to combo with this card, I need to make sure that they get placed into the deck so that they come out in the right order so that they can combo with each other. Because I'm only drawing 3 cards each turn. And if I suddenly have one card that combos with another and it's not in my hand because it's 2 sets down in the deck and it won't come out for another round or 2, I have to either find a way to hold on to that card so it can combo later, or I have to figure out a way to sort of rearrange my cards or draw more cards so that I can combo right now. And this addition to the game, to my ability to manipulate and to change up the way that the game plays, is both helpful for solving the puzzle, but also adds another piece of the puzzle that makes this whole decision space that much more fun. I can't say enough about how much game is in this small package and how everything plays off of everything else in such a way that it just feels really good to play. I will say that the core difficulty level, once you've played once or twice, is pretty easy. I will never ever play the easy mode where you don't have to fight the level 3 and level 4 bosses or adventurers, because that's a joke after maybe your first or second game. And that might be a good way to start the game, but realistically there's no real reason not to play the full game and just die a little bit and start understanding how to do better than to play a sort of reduced game that's a little bit easier. Unless maybe you're younger or you do really want a very, very easy game. That's fine. I'm not judging at all. I'm just saying that there's no real reason to go easier than the standard because, at least in my experience, it's fairly easy to do well on that sort of standard level. There are then 2 steps up. The next level, again, is the one where you start with that sort of fledgling hero at the beginning, at the bottom of your deck. So you don't get him in your early hands, but he will come out later. And then you have to make sure to use him against the final boss, and you have to have at least 1 crystal left at the end of the game. So that adds some new restrictions. It doesn't really change up much. It just adds some new restrictions, and it makes that final boss battle interesting because you have to figure out a way to work in that fledgling hero into that final attack. And that really does add a little theme to the game and also does add to the challenge. And that's sort of the level that I enjoy playing at most, I think. But then there's also the even harder level where you're fighting against another sort of demon dungeon lord who's invading your dungeon, and you start with all of the level 1 characters in your hand. And then you have to fight a slightly harder boss at the end. What that does really is what it means is you're starting by fighting against the level 2 adventurers, and you're getting 1 less event in the game. And most of the time those events are good things for you. So you're basically just starting right away with the hard stuff. And for me, that does add more interesting challenge because even that first step up, that sort of level up when you start with the fledgling hero, is still not all that difficult. So this extra level of difficulty does help and it does add more challenge. But what it does mean is that the sort of start of the game is more important than later in the game because I'm going to be hit with heavy stuff right from the get-go. And if I don't have the right sort of mix of cards at the beginning, I can't necessarily do very well because also what that means is by starting with all of those level 1 characters in my hand or in my deck, I also don't get them as crystals to buy things or to do things later on in the game, which then also hurts me because I have to be extra careful and extra efficient, and it does increase the challenge. I have managed to beat that game or that version of the game, and it is still fun because it does add more challenge, it does add more restrictions, and I would absolutely play it again. But because of the sort of top-heavy front-loading of if you can make it through the first 3 rounds, then the challenge really isn't that much different versus the whole game being more difficult. I don't know how much I prefer that difficulty level. I would probably aim for, once you're comfortable with the game, playing with that level that you start with that specific hero and then have specific restrictions because that to me is the most fun. But anyway, I love the puzzle that's presented here, and even if it's an easy play, even if I play on one of the earlier or the lower difficulty levels, it is still really fun to churn through the puzzle to figure out how to best match all of these things, how to put all of these things in good order and make efficient use of everything you have. I love this game, and I will continue to play this game, and more importantly, this is the first of the Jugame Pocket Series games that I have played, and what that does is now I want to go out and try all of them because I'm very, very excited about this series, and I'm very excited that there are many of these small box solo games, or at least soloable games from Jugame that I really do want to check out. So again, Big strong recommend for me on this one. This might be a little bit harder to track down because it is not distributed in America. I did buy this from Japan and everything is in Japanese, but I hope that this video was helpful for you to sort of understand what the game is, and even more importantly, I hope that this game is helpful to sort of teach you how the game plays and even sort of give you the English translation of everything, because I showed you everything on screen and told you what it does. So if you took some notes, you could play through this game perfectly okay from this video, I hope. In any case, I really love this one. If you're a fan of small box solo games, if you like deck builders, definitely give this one a check out if you can. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. As always, if this was a nice video and you did enjoy it, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.